have to remember that you represent your client, but you're not your client. And
Mm.
if you become your client, you're really doing them a disservice.
Hey everyone, I'm Denisa Tova, host of Beyond the Bar podcast, and my guest today, wow, this has been a long time coming. We've actually known each other professionally for quite some time, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know her beyond her fabulous accolades. But nonetheless, she's been practicing family law on Long Island for over 3 decades. Debra Rubin. She's a founder and managing attorney of the law offices of Debra Rubin P. LLC. She started right out of Hofstra Law at the Nassau County Legal Aid Society. She built her career through some of the most respected matrimonial firms on Long Island and eventually opened her own firm. And I know that's not easy. Now, she's been named to Super Lawyers every year since 2011, recognized as one of the outstanding women in law by Hofstra Law, and named one of the 10 leaders of matrimonial and divorce law on Long Island. Debra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Denisa.
My pleasure. So, what I typically start with, what's your story, but before we dive in, I have to say, we're connected on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and almost every time I see a post, you have your little furry friend with
Oh,
you
my dogs, they're my loves. I have two of them.
too. Okay, they're adorable. Oh my gosh.
My mini golden doodle and my cockapoo, and they are the best, the best.
Have
Always
you?
happy to see me. They don't ask for money. They don't roll their eyes at me, all that good stuff.
I was just gonna say it's an unconditional love. They never talk back, and they just want to be there, regardless whatever day you're having, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Always greeting
Wow.
me when I come in the door, without question.
Oh, did you have dogs growing up?
I had, for a while, I had one dog growing up. My dad was a dog person. My mom was not a dog person. My brother was not a dog person. He used to do bad things to our dog, and once he put vodka in the dog's water. So we don't tell that story. He wasn't meant to have pets, but everyone knew in the house the dog was mine. So we did have that dog for a while growing up. And he actually, sadly, ran away
Mm.
when he was pretty old and had vision problems, and we never found him.
Oh,
So that was heartbreaking, heartbreaking. But after I got married, my husband is also a dog person, so we have had dogs ever since.
yeah, I can't imagine being married to someone who's not a dog
No,
person,
me
right?
neither. Me neither. Definitely not. It would not work for me at all.
Yeah, no, wow, that's yeah, I didn't have dogs growing up. Just couldn't, we were in the city back in Eastern Europe, and mom
Hmm.
was single mom raising us really. So the dog would have been, i- in sort of an apartment building, 12-story
Right.
apartment building, by himself. But later on in life, she got a couple of little doggies and became her life. And for me, it wasn't until uh really when I moved in with Glenn several years ago, and I just really started experiencing what it's like
Hmm.
to have a dog, and it's a life-changing thing. I,
It
I
is. I
can't.
say every dog is a therapy dog, whether they're trained to be
Yeah.
one or not. Your dog is your therapy dog, without question.
That is so true. I look at him sometimes and I go, ooh, okay, is this how I'm showing up? Or, he just, yeah, it's almost like a mirror reflection.
Hmm.
Yeah. So tell me your story. I mean, how did you get here, and who impacted you, or what impacted you to become an attorney?
You know, when I was a kid, there were a couple of choices milling around my head as to what I was going to do with my life. My parents always instilled in me that they wanted me to be a professional. My dad, may he rest in peace, was, a blue collar worker. He worked for the New York City Department of Corrections. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And my parents wanted better for us financially. They wanted us to further our education. In my head, I was always like, psychologist, lawyer, and then my mom tried to say teacher or nurse, and I immediately put the kibosh on that because I felt like she was telling me that because she thought it was a woman's job. So, so I'm like, no. So I eventually settled on lawyer. I went to law school at Hofstra, as you mentioned, and my first job out of law school was working for the Family Court Bureau of the Nassau County Legal Aid Society. And in that job, I represented indigent people in order of protection cases, custody, child support, visitation, and child abuse and neglect cases.
Oh,
And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was a very collegial atmosphere. You got to learn on your feet. You were almost, I was almost too young and inexperienced to know that I should be nervous to do a trial because that's kind of what you did. This is your case. This is your client. You're on trial. Go figure it
wow.
out. And it was a great, great experience, great way to be in the courtroom right away, and truly rewarding. I remember one specific occasion, and maybe this was because I was young and foolish, that I went to pick up one of my clients who did not have a ride to court in somewhat of an unsavory neighborhood where I probably should not have been by myself. And somebody later told me it was probably a crack house, but I picked her up and I drove her to court so she could make her court appearance on time. I remember giving clients money for bus fare. So this wasn't, working for legal aid was not a money-making venture, but it was, it was inspiring. It was important. And it was a great way for me to get my footing and get some professional experience as well.
That's amazing. And those are tough, tough situations.
Absolutely.
Was there a moment, was there a time during that period of time when you worked there where you thought this is just too much? Being sort of immersed in some of this child neglect. Was it yeah,
You
what
know,
was that like?
there were certainly moments that got difficult, seeing clients have their children taken away from them is, heartbreaking. Um, but yet I always felt like I was doing something important there, and I truly enjoyed it. The unfortunate thing about public interest work is, it really doesn't pay the bills. And as I said, I came from a family with only one working parent, so I did have significant student loans coming out of law school. So it wasn't something that I could remain in as my end goal from a practical standpoint, but it was absolutely an invaluable experience. And every time someone says, because I remember this as a young lawyer, people would say, "Oh, I'm going to get a real lawyer," as if when you're with legal aid, you're not a real lawyer. People don't understand, and sometimes other lawyers don't understand how hard those public interest attorneys work and how much their heart is really in it and how invested they are in the process for their clients.
So you ended up in a private sector then after.
I did. I
Yeah.
did a brief stint in New York City. It wasn't really the right fit for me. And then I went on to work for Kenneth Coopersmith, may he rest in peace, who I spent more than 9 years with, and, who truly taught me most of what I know about being a lawyer. Completely different client base. So I essentially went from representing very poor people to people who were, high on the economic ladder. Um, and while the financial issues were somewhat more complicated, the emotional issues were relatively the same when you're talking about, relationships breaking up, infidelity, custody issues with children, the emotions were all the same.
And I could ask, how do you deal with it where you simply have had plenty of experience being immersed in it, but I'm curious about we talk about now you have sort of the other another layer, and we have the opposing counsel, right, the
Mhm.
other attorneys. I mean, how do you
Yes.
deal when they get sort of immersed in the case, and could say they're sort of unreasonable? How do you handle
It
that?
happens, and it is
Yeah,
certainly, a different dynamic when people are paying their attorneys, right?
right.
There are different expectations from your clients. There are different pressures on attorneys.
Yeah.
I find in large part my adversaries are reasonable, especially people who've been doing this for a long time. You have to remember that you represent your client, but you're not your client. And
Mm.
if you become your client, you're really doing them a disservice. You really need to stay above the emotional fray in order to be able to do the right job for them. Because if you're getting into it with opposing counsel, the way the parties are getting into it with each other, all that is being accomplished is the counsel fees are being wasted. And you're really not working towards a productive resolution. So, I try and remind my clients that they should want both attorneys to have a collegial and respectful relationship because that's the only way things are going to get accomplished.
That is really well put, because to start a war, it's easy. To end one is impossible, and it's also very expensive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's uncertain results too, always.
Right.
Something else I always tell my clients, you can let the judge decide. And I can tell you what the law says, but I can never guarantee what the judge is going to do, even though I can tell you what the law says. And it's going to take a long time to get to the finish line. If you go to trial, it's going to cost you a lot of money, and the result is uncertain. Whereas if you work out a resolution, even though it may not be perfect, because no resolution is going to be perfect, especially when you're going through such a difficult time, at least you have some say in the outcome. You've had a hand in it. You've crafted the resolution instead of a stranger listening to you for a few hours, listening to your spouse for a couple of hours, and based just upon what they hear in that snapshot in time, making a decision that's going to impact the rest of your lives.
Right. Based on a fraction of an
Correct.
information that gets passed on to them, of course, and there's no vindication of any kind. This is not about fairness, which is so deeply individual, and everybody has their own interpretation. This is about, here's what we have in terms of, stuff, assets,
Hmm.
debt, and then of course we have to deal with children and how we
Right.
will co-parent, and that's
Right.
it. But yeah, that is a good
Yeah.
point.
I mean, and the co-parenting piece is harder, obviously.
Yes,
The
yes.
when you're just dealing with money, I'll try and explain to my clients, look, this is a business decision. How much are you
Mhm.
going to spend to get how much? So, what are you fighting over? And is it worth spending that in counsel fees, number one, and in aggravation, two, to go through the litigation process? With children, of course, if it's a true custody case, you can't put a dollar value on
Of
that. So,
course.
that's different. But with financial issues, there's almost no situation where they shouldn't be resolved.
So after almost 30 years practicing in this field, what still surprises you about this work?
What surprises me about the work? I don't know that anything surprises me about the work. I can still hear stories from clients that surprise me, believe it or not. Just when I think I've heard everything, there can be
Yeah.
something new, but I don't know that there's anything that surprises me about the work anymore. It evolves, the law changes somewhat. The court's views change somewhat. Recently,
Mm.
there's been this big trend all of a sudden to 50-50 custody, which, 15 years ago was definitely not the case. So, you kind of have to keep up with the trends. Social trends change, and the interpretation of the law sometimes changes along with that.
Now, I'm making an assumption here because I truly do not know. Are you married?
I am married.
Okay.
It will be next month, it'll be 29 years.
Wow, long
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So long time to have practiced this also is how do you two individually handle conflict, arguments?
Probably like any other couple, every marriage has its ups and downs, right? There's no such thing as a perfect relationship.
Yes.
So if people go
Yeah.
into marriage thinking everything's going to be perfect, that's just not real life. But I think it's a matter of looking at what the truly important things are. Do you respect each other? Do you love each other? Do you care about each other's interests? Do you put the other person before yourself? And sure, there are going to be annoying things. The garbage didn't go out, or, there's a mess on the
Yeah.
kitchen floor, or you didn't make the bed. But those things are relatively minor. And in seeing what some of my clients go through, it
Mm.
really does give me an appreciation of my own life and, reminds me sometimes don't sweat the small stuff. This is really small stuff.
Yeah, no, that is great. Same. Yeah. Are you one that needs to sort of talk things out and find sort of a resolution fairly quickly, or do you need one? Are you the one who sort of needs to sit on it for a while before
No,
come back?
I'm a talker.
You're talking.
I like resolution. I don't like going to bed angry. I don't like
Yeah.
things hanging over my head. That's with my husband, with friends, with my children, whoever it is in my personal life. I like to find resolution.
Yeah, yeah, same. No, they say that. Don't go to bed angry and
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no, you know what I say? There is no it's not like there's a constant state of happiness, not at all, but it's contentment, and I think, that's sort of how I would describe it. bec- Finding a contentment, and always there is this knowing that no matter what, whatever you argue about or whatever it is, that you'll always come back to one
yeah,
another respectfully. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So what do you guys do when you're not working?
Well, my husband's retired, so he's not working a lot, but I'm
At all?
well, he's not he's got my honey-do list though, he's got my
Okay.
list every day. Um, when I'm not working, I'm a big baseball fan. I'm a big Yankee fan, so I like to go to Yankee games. I'm a big Disney person. We're a
Ooh.
Disney family. We love Disney. Even though my kids are grown now, we still love Disney. And we're just now, as we're getting to this different part in life, starting to expand our travel. So we just went last year, not even last year, 2 months ago, we were in Greece and Italy, which
Mm.
was a fabulous trip. So I'm really looking to find the time to do a little bit more international travel at this point.
When you travel, like when you guys went on this trip, how do you like to travel? Do you like to sit by water and just enjoy? Do you like to take tours? Do you line anything up before you
Yeah,
get there?
I mean, kind of a combination of both. I always work with a travel agent because I'm just too busy to figure everything out for myself. And it just one less piece of stress. So we did a combination this last time of sightseeing and relaxing. We flew into Rome and we spent 3 days there. So that was a lot of hustling and running around and getting up early. And then the rest of our trip was a cruise. So we cruised a couple of ports in Italy and a few ports in Greece. And that was a great balance of seeing things, but also having time to sit and relax by the pool, not having to change hotels every night and that sort of thing.
I've never taken a cruise.
Oh, it's amazing. You should try it. It's as long as you
Really?
don't get seasick.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't know.
You really don't feel anything unless the seas are rough. And this last trip, we felt nothing. So I've never gotten seasick. I know, for people who do, not a great experience. I wouldn't recommend it, but we love it. We love it. So we've cruised a lot.
One thing I probably wouldn't take like a Caribbean cruise, but we talked about. I'm originally from Europe, or born and
Hmm.
raised in Prague, and so we got back from Prague and Sicily, and there's two countries. Even though you can get from one to the other in Europe relatively fast, it's almost like that's all you can reasonably accomplish. With transfers and all that within
Hmm.
about 7-8 days or so. So we did talk about maybe taking a cruise, possibly the European They have the Viking cruise
Mhm. River
to
cruises.
see
They do a lot of
river
river
cruises.
cruises, banking.
Yes. Yeah, to see more countries that way. So that's a possibility. We're getting
Right.
there. Yeah, for sure. So and what recharges your batteries?
What recharges my batteries? Relaxing when I can get it in
Yeah.
there. I mean, going out with friends. I belong to a book club, so with a bunch of girls getting together with the girls, and it's not even about the book. It's about, 5 minutes about the book and then drinking some wine and talking about whatever else. So just a diversion, just a normal Saturday night out with friends, spending time with my grown sons, obviously. Anything other than working, quite frankly.
I love to hear that. Many people are so immersed in it and they can't put it away. That doesn't mean, you care less. That just means, well, in order for me to be effective in what I do, is I
Absolutely.
need, to recharge my
Yeah,
batteries. So,
absolutely, absolutely. That downtime is very important whenever you can get it in there.
yeah, good for you. Um, and the team, now you have your own firm,
I
correct?
do. I have my own firm. I have two paralegals with me now. I have a bookkeeper, and I actually have an associate starting in a little over a month. She's a new law grad, and she interned for me for a couple of semesters. She's studying for the bar right now, and she'll be starting with us when she graduates and finishes her bar exam. So we're excited to bring someone else aboard.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. What are some of the top qualities you're looking for when you were interviewing candidates?
Drive.
Mm,
Drive and a willingness to work hard. And I recognize generationally that there's a change in Gen X, which is me, and Gen Z, which is my children and my potential hires, how they approach the workplace and work-life balance and all of that. And not that there's a right or wrong, but it's a matter of adapting to what the younger generation is looking for in order
mm,
to have someone that's going to work for you. So they have to, in some ways, accommodate me. And I understand in some ways the way I work is not going to be the way they work. I think they put more of a value on a work life balance, which is not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing. But it's a hard thing, I think, when my generation says, oh my God, I was in the office every morning at 7:30 and I left every night at 8 o'clock. And look, in large part, that's still how I work. That's my business. But it's not necessarily a realistic expectation for a new young attorney to do that. And again,
yeah.
it's okay. I get it. I still struggle with my work-life balance, so I am respectful of the fact that people need to set up boundaries. But if somebody's giving it their all and somebody's really putting in the effort, and you're giving them work and it's getting done, and they're asking you good questions, and they want to learn, a willingness to learn and a desire to learn are extremely, extremely important.
Oh, you just captured it so, so, so well. This is the first time ever I'm hearing someone recognize the generational difference and expressing that it is okay because it's just as the incoming attorneys and them sort of needing to uh, you know, to sort of adapt and still do it it's not the old fashioned, it's just simply how it has been done, which is showing up
Mhm.
in person, not make everything, virtual and, ask questions and work hard. It's also the recognition from the other side and
Right,
understanding that that's just
right,
it
right.
is.
Yep.
So kind of meet somewhere. And I love what you're saying because my entire team is virtual and it works well. It works exceptionally well for the right person. And I always believe if you give people what they need to thrive, they will, the right people, right? And it
Mhm.
doesn't work so well for others. So,
Right.
there is that trust and understanding and the work gets done. And I love what you said about questions they ask can be really insightful.
Mhm.
Wow.
It's you it you know it makes you realize that they're paying attention, that they want to learn, as opposed to just wanting you to spoon feed them. They want to learn,
Yes.
they want to figure it out for themselves. That's important.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Would kind of staying on that, as we're sort of coming to the end of this, is what would be your overall advice to someone thinking about, their newish attorney and they're trying to figure out which field? What would you tell them?
Which type of law? I would
Yeah.
say, you know, try and intern or experience a few different areas because everybody's different. And what I do is not a good fit for everybody. In fact, many attorneys who practice in other areas will tell me, I don't know how you do this. I would not touch matrimonial and family law with a 10-foot pole. But it works for me. I feel like my personality is suited to it. I'm not the kind of person who ever wanted to be shuffling papers all day. But try it. Intern in a matrimonial firm. Intern in the DA's office. Expose yourself to other kinds of attorneys and other kinds of firms, even if you're not making money to do this, just to get the exposure and speak to lawyers. It's hard to know really until you try something if
Yes.
it's for you, but exposing yourself to as many things as you can, certainly when you're in your 3 years of law school, can help you get a better focus as to where you ultimately want to end up.
Great advice. Deborah, thank you so much for so generously sharing your story and your thoughts and your passion, for this area and to help guide people through this very difficult time. I mean, it shows. And so thank you very much.
And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And I'm sure our viewers and listeners, to find Deborah, go to her website, rubindivorcelaw.com. We have a link below the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.